The other day, I was having coffee with a colleague. She, like me, used to be a classroom teacher before moving into the world of edtech here at Kahoot. But she recently made a huge decision. She's going back. Back to the classroom, back to the bells, the teacher's lounge, the roar in the hallways between periods. And it got us thinking, what if you could get a second chance at your first year? What would you do differently? Where to draw the line, when to say no, when to accept that good enough is actually great. So I went on a search. I asked 3 teachers from our Kahoot community to share their secrets, not just for surviving the school year, but for building a career that is sustainable and joyful. So, whether you're looking for a fresh start or just a bit of inspiration, this episode is for you. Welcome to Kahoot Impact Podcast. My name is Meira and I'm a learning designer at Kahoot. That conversation with my colleague is something I think every educator feels, especially at this time of year. Whether it's your very first year or your 21st, the start of a new school year is the ultimate fresh start, a chance to do things differently. So for this episode, we're going on a search for an answer to that question. If you could get a fresh start, what are the secrets to building a classroom that not only runs smoothly, but is also a place of joy for your students and for you? We didn't want just one perspective, so we called 3 brilliant Kahoot ambassadors: Karim, a teacher and a teacher trainer in Morocco; Elizabeth, a K-5 STEM teacher in New York City; and Annika, a 21-year veteran high school teacher from Sweden. Together, they have nearly 50 years of combined experience. This is their back-to-school toolkit. The first thing all 3 of our experts agreed on was that before you can even think about curriculum or engagement, you have to build the foundation. A sense of calm, of safety, of predictability, of trust. The place where students can finally relax and be ready to learn. So how do you build that? For Karim, it starts by throwing out the old idea of top-down rules and instead co-creating the culture with your students.
Number 1, set up routines from the very beginning of the year. Now, school year will start in September. Then you have to just have the meeting with your students and set up rules or routines. And we call them routines because rules would imply there is a kind of authority. You are authority figure, but I would love to have routines. And routines would just strengthen the bonds among learners and strengthen the bond between you and learners. And in the first hand, you learners know what to expect and what to do, what not to do. And they would be more engaged in learning rather than being lost, what to do next, what is the teacher expecting me to do, etc. So I used to offer students a kind of, like, I would form groups and I would ask them to just set their own rules and just go, what would you like to do? I like do's and not don'ts.
This idea of a predictable rhythm is powerful. And for Annika, that rhythm is built directly into the structure of every single class period. She uses a familiar tool to create that feeling of safety, even when the content is brand new.
Well, past couple of years, last 10 years or so, I've tried to quite early on implement a lesson structure. So I write it on the whiteboard, and more or less I start each lesson with a Kahoot quiz as an introduction or a review of the last lesson. And then I continue with the lesson content. It could be a lecture or another kind of go-through with today's topic. And then I end the lesson with the stations or learning centers.
Okay.
So then they can choose between Kahoot quizzes, Kahoot micro lessons, and that could be both for struggling or advanced learners, so they can deepen their knowledge. or practical assignments, since my subject is both theoretical and practical in the content. And it could be individual reading, or it could be film clips or so on. And then in the end, I end my lesson with a Kahoot challenge as an exit ticket.
A predictable structure creates safety. But what about the physical structure of the room? This is where it gets tricky, and I have to admit, this is a trap I fell into my first year. I was convinced that the perfect classroom meant a beautiful classroom. I spent a whole week before school started on my own time, laminating everything. The bulletin boards were immaculate. And I'll never forget my mentor teacher walking in, taking one look around and asking me a question that completely changed my perspective. She said, "Meira, this looks like your classroom. So where is the space for the students to make it their classroom?" And that question, where is the space for the students, has stuck with me ever since. And it turns out I wasn't alone. I heard a nearly identical story from Elizabeth.
Wait, I was spending a lot of time on Instagram. I was looking at Pinterest and I was saying, "Oh, I want my classroom to look like that. I want to have that cute bulletin board." And I just spent time like setting up the bulletin boards and making my classroom look really nice and cute. But interestingly enough, when I was doing this, it was actually the COVID-19 pandemic, the peak. It was September 2020. So I had this idea in my mind of what I wanted my classroom to look like. But then I guess back then I didn't realize that it wasn't going to happen because the kids couldn't even be in groups. They were sitting 6 feet apart and they had like desk shields, and a lot of the things I wanted to do, I couldn't do. So I don't know. I was just spending time with the wrong things. And I remember my partner teacher, because when I first started, I had a partner teacher. She said, "Don't worry about like the bulletin boards and stuff. Let's focus on like, looking at the curriculum. How are we going to teach, week 1 because we have cohorts of students?" And back then, I think it goes back to prioritizing. I really wasn't prioritizing what mattered. And I think that's why I was wearing myself out more. And like going back to what you said, I was laminating stuff and laminating things that I ended up not even using.
Moving the focus from the teacher to the students and their learning. And that's the key. It's not your show, it's the students. It's empowering students like Karim does by co-creating rules and routines, or Annika creating safety with a predictable but engaging lesson structure with opportunities for small group work and interactions. And for Elizabeth and me, it meant learning to let go of that Pinterest perfect ideal. In fact, Elizabeth took that lesson so far that now she starts her school year with her main bulletin board completely empty. She leaves it as a blank canvas, a living portfolio to be filled with whatever the students create throughout the year. It's a literal way of making space for them on the walls. It all points to the same secret. A calm classroom isn't about perfect decorations, or not even perfect worksheets or perfect lesson plans. It's about building a predictable and welcoming environment where students feel they truly belong. Okay, so the foundation is set. The classroom feels safe, students are ready to learn. But what I sometimes found hard in teaching is that I have these big words I want to teach, like collaboration, curiosity, or creativity. But then when the students walk into the classroom, what do I actually concretely do? Now, Annika talked about how she always starts with a Kahoot. Quick, easy, and you can match any topic. Elizabeth is a STEM teacher, so she also shared her favorite low-prep hands-on activity to get students' brains turning.
So I like to do these creativity challenges. For me as a STEM teacher, they're so much fun. So it'll be like a picture of something that's like incomplete. Like it might look like a pumpkin. It might look like what was another one? Like a dinosaur or something, but the image is incomplete. And the challenge is you have like 2-3 minutes. The teacher can always pick and adjust the time to take this picture and turn it into something else. So it's not a dinosaur. It's your job to take it and to turn it into something else. And the kids have crayons and they have markers. and then I time them. And then once the timer goes off, we share about what it was. And the things that the kids come up with is incredible. Like I had a student with, I think it was like, it's not a mermaid, but it looked like half a mermaid. And they said it's an ice cream cone. And then I remember I turned my head to the side. I was like, oh, you're right. Like the mermaid's tail, she turned it into like the brown like cone, and then the top of it, she added like a cherry on top of the head. And I said, wow, that was really creative. So it's a really quick, concrete way to sort of tap into student creativity. And I feel like it's a good way to wake them up too, because if it's Monday morning at 8 a.m., like everyone's tired, I'm tired, I'm sure the kids are tired. And I feel like it's a good way to activate their brains. And again, going into like promoting creativity. So that's something I like to do a lot. And it's very quick. I usually have multiple like creativity challenges available for the kids in case some finish quickly. But it's lots of fun, and it's a good way for you to see how your kids think.
But engagement isn't just about one fun activity. It's about reaching every student, especially those who seem distant. Elizabeth shared this powerful story about a student who just wasn't connecting.
So there's this one student in particular, and he's actually going into third grade now. I can't believe it, actually. I remember him since kindergarten. In the past, it was just really hard to get him to engage because he wanted to just, play with Legos. He wanted to do something else. We were working on a toy design challenge, and this is for second grade. And they basically just learn about the properties of materials. So like some materials are soft, some materials are flexible, some of them are hard. And then they take what they learned and they try to like select makerspace materials. So like pipe cleaners, popsicle sticks, other things like that. So I think in this particular case, the reason he engaged in this activity was because of choice. This particular activity was very open-ended. And in the past, it would sort of be that, I would give them materials and then they had to they had like a set goal in the end. Versus this activity, I gave them the materials, but in this case, I didn't really tell them what exactly the outcome was going to be. Their goal was just to make a toy that was fun and durable. And in this case, I think he was engaged in it because it was something he was interested in. He got a choice in what he wanted to make. And in this case, it was student interest, that he got a chance to make a character that he liked.
Choice, student interest, giving them the space to make it their own. It's the same lesson from the bulletin board and the classroom rules, but applied to the curriculum itself. When it's your own, you are more engaged, you are more committed. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most important part of the toolkit. The classroom is calm, the students are engaged, but the person who is the easiest to forget is the teacher. If you don't protect your own energy, none of the rest matters. I asked Elizabeth what she'd tell her first-year self.
So I really think it's important for first-year teachers to know that you can prioritize what needs to get done. The work will always be there, but you should always try to look out for yourself, because at the end of the day, you're the teacher and, you're a human being too. So I do speak from experience when I say, take care of yourself. And I also think having fun, because I think my first year, I was also so stressed out about, figuring out what needed to get done that I kind of forgot about the joy in teaching, because teaching can be fun. And once I figured that out, like in the middle of the year, I was having fun. And I think that's important to remember, that teaching is fun, and don't lose that joy because you get caught up in the work that needs to get done.
That feeling of being overwhelmed is so real. So how do you start to push back against it? For Karim, it begins with a conscious mindset and a daily practice of reflection.
The last one, it's staying positive. And I think this is a big word. Staying positive means in front of challenges, of issues you're going to face. I mean, as a newbie, we all faced challenges and issues, sometimes even like difficult situations that we thought like, why am I here? Why am I giving myself this hard time? But still, once you have kind of procedures to follow and then move beyond these, and you develop certain kind of confidence, certain kind of ways of dealing with these troubles, I think things will brighten up. I think teachers need to just be aware and reflect. Reflect after each lesson what went well, what didn't work, and how can I improve this? How could I do this differently? So if teachers have this process, of course, with supervisors' guidance, with colleagues, seasoned ones, and even newbies too, they could be having a kind of culture of community of professional development in school. That's something I believe that would help a lot in easing their job, because it's not easy. It's a life-changing job.
That internal practice, staying positive and active reflecting, is important, but not always easy. I started doing breath work with my toughest classroom ever, and I thought it was silly at the time. Like, I need a proper solution, not just breathing. But years later, I still come back to those same exercises, even outside the classroom. You can't always control the chaos, but you can control how you approach it. Overwhelmed or grounded and ready to listen. And thinking you have to do it all by yourself might not be for the best. Annika, with her 21 years of experience, says the most important boundary you can set is a boundary against that isolation.
They should ask their colleagues. Or maybe, like we were talking about collaborative learning. I know it might not be just the colleagues at your school. It could be the extensive, the collaborative community on the internet or so on, and ask questions, because this is a field of work that you don't do on your own. You need to work as a team when you're a teacher, and you learn so much from the team.
Annika believes in community so much that she keeps all her Kahoots open for anyone to use, copy, and edit. I will link her profile in the show notes for anyone who wants to see what she does in the classroom concretely. And how to move from just surviving that first year to building a long, joyful career. Annika left us with this beautiful, calming piece of wisdom.
This is a handicraft,
Mm-hmm.
You need to constantly, perfect yourself, and you learn so much during the way. And you don't have to change everything, but yeah, you can always learn something new and change something. And that's why I like to work with stations as well, because you can always put in another station and see how that works. And you don't have to change the whole lesson. It's just a piece in the puzzle. You try another new piece and see if that works better.
Just change one piece of the puzzle. Just one. Don't reinvent the whole thing. Give yourself permission to iterate, to learn, to be a work in progress, just like your students. So, if you could get a fresh start, what really matters? It seems to come down to 3 things. First, build your foundation with routines that create safety and a culture that makes students feel seen. Second, find the spark by giving students real choice and ownership over their learning. And finally, play the long game. Protect your own energy, lean on your community, and remember that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to try another new piece of the puzzle. A huge thank you to our incredible ambassadors, Karim, Elizabeth, and Annika, for sharing their time and their wisdom. I'm Meira, and this is Kahoot Impact. We'll see you next time.